What's up, everybody? This is episode 122 of Hoops Talk with Dave's Joint. Shout outs to everybody that's been supporting us thus far. For those who haven't seen any of our episodes, go check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and IGTV. But before we start, we got to pay some bills real quick. So this episode is sponsored by the Players Circle. I discovered the Players Circle in the App Store when trying to find a product to track athletes. The Players Circle is a social video platform where players can share their stats, highlights, and accomplishments. If you can hoop and you want to get discovered, then you should join the Players Circle. So everybody, go check out this app. I use it religiously, and you should too. So go check out, the Players Circle if you want to post videos, pictures, and it's definitely a dope app. But without further ado, we have a very special guest tonight. He is one of the best up and coming coaches out here. He coached at Springfield Commonwealth Academy recently and is now in the process of his new prep school in the Midwest. Tonight, I have with us Coach Nick Colouris. Nick, thanks for coming on to share your story.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me, Dave.
Indeed, man. So let me ask you, so this is our first question. What's Nick Colouris's coaching philosophy?
Sure. We start on the defensive end first. We're going to pressure you 94 feet for the whole game. So we go 40 minutes of 94-foot pressure. We got, at any given time, 3 to 5 presses that we're going to interchange between. And our biggest thing is to turn that into offense, advantage offense. We want one-on-one fast breaks. We want 3-on-2s, 2-on-1s. And we always feel like with our players that we're able to bring in, a one-on-one is a advantage situation for us on the offensive end. So we want to let guys play in space first and foremost, and we want to get out on the break and play fast. And a lot of coaches will say they want to play fast. We averaged over 97 points a game this previous year at Springfield with the guys we had, that group: Femi, Odukale, Enoch Cheeks, Aaron Gray, Isaiah Richards, and a number of other guys. So we push the pace as much as possible, and we run a lot of guys out there at you. But it all starts on the defensive end for us. We're a strictly man-to-man team in the half court. If you can't guard your position, then that's not the position for you. If you can't guard your man, you can't play for us. So we're definitely a solid defensive team. And then, like I said, we like to get out on the break. We run a lot of ball screen stuff in the half court. We run a lot of dribble drive in the half court. But it's more about teaching kids how to play, the spacing of the game, read and react type stuff, and then let those guys go out there and execute, as opposed to Princeton offense, back screen, 4 passes, and then you can get into your offense type thing.
Well said. So when did basketball first begin for you?
Man, I've been playing since I was a little kid, 3-4 years old, outside at the park, those type of things. I'm from New York originally, so it's just a lifestyle type thing, right? Stopped playing after high school, made the decision to go to St. John's University. Obviously wasn't good enough to play at that level. But academically, it was a great school for me. And I was able to actually connect with a lot of guys that actually got me started into this basketball thing, post-college. I met a coach who was also an adjunct teacher, Dr. Harold Merritt at St. John's, and he connected me with Lee Klein up at 5-Star for an internship. And I worked with Lee and Tony Bergeron, who was, most recently at UMass, and, coached at Springfield Commonwealth, coached at Woodstock Academy, wings in the city. So those guys kind of got me started. I interned for them for 2 years, worked full-time after I graduated St. John's for another 5 at 5-Star. And then Lee decided to sell the company. So after 7 years at 5-Star, I took a job at DME Sports Academy down in Florida. That was kind of my first introduction to the prep school basketball piece. I was the GM of basketball down there. I worked under Lance Blanks, who played in the league, was a first-round pick by the Detroit Pistons. Assistant GM for the Cleveland Cavaliers. he was the GM for a short stint with the Phoenix Suns. So I got a chance to work with a guy that had tons of NBA experience on a number of levels. And I was there for about a year and a half. And we took a program that was 4-24 the year before, not a very good high school program, to a state Final Four the next year. And that was kind of our introduction into the space as, you know, a legitimate contender when it comes to prep school stuff. We sent, I think, 8 kids to school Division I that year, which was a huge year for us, turning a program around, making the state Final Four for the independent conference. And after that, I realized how much I really wanted to, you know, I was recruiting all the guys, but there wasn't a space for me to coach there. So I wanted to actually coach the guys that I was bringing in. So I took the job at Potter's House, worked at Potter's House for a year as the assistant head coach down there. We made another state Final Four run at a separate school. We sent another, I think, 7 or 9 guys, Division I down there. We had a really great class. We had the kid Mervyn James, who just actually transferred to Ryder, but it was all ASUN freshman of the year at Northern Alabama. Weza Ponzo, who went to Stetson. Shea Gilgis-Alexander's little brother Tomasi, who was at University of Evansville. Marseille Caston, who was at Northwest Florida State, actually, for the last 2 years, was top 25 in junior college scoring. Keanu Calderon, who actually came back to play for me this year at Springfield Commonwealth, he'll actually be announcing his school soon. We had the kid Mayum, who's at Loyola Marymount out in California. Who else did we have? Dontavius King, who was at College of Charleston, just transferred to North Carolina Central. And a kid, DeAndre Harvey, who's playing at University of Tampa Division II. Jazz Farrell, who's playing Division II. A kid, Matt Sams, also playing Division II. So we had, you know, super talented roster. Oh, we had an international kid, Konstantin Datchenko, who just played at Tarleton State this year, another Division I kid. So we had a super talented group. We're able to do a ton of great things. Made the grind session quarterfinals that year in the national championships. And then with all that, obviously, Tony, Coach Bergeron, being one of my mentors, this spot opened up at Springfield for the head coaching job. So obviously I jumped on that chance to get back up into the Northeast where I'm from, fairly familiar with the NEPSAC conference and everything like that, and what that kind of notoriety brought to us and what it could bring to a program. So took that over. Obviously we had a super successful year. I attribute a lot of that to the kids that we were able to get. A couple of those guys that I mentioned, we went 31-6, qualified for the National Prep Championship in year 1, which I don't know if that's happened in New England. Sent a number of kids to school, Division I, obviously, most notably Femi Odukale, who's playing at Pitt right now, was kind of our headliner. I mean, he had offers from basically every school in the country. So, you know, we had a ton of success. We thought we were going to be able to, you know, mimic that this year. We had a super deep, very talented group, a lot of New York City kids, as I'm sure you're familiar with, Jalen Murray, Juju, Ibrahim Ouattara, who committed to Fairleigh Dickinson. Had a kid, Troy Hupstead, out of Mount Vernon. Trying to think, who else did we have? Geez, a number of guys, obviously. Super New York heavy. Ikenna Uday Smith, who's at plays for the Riverside Hawks as well. And then a number of other guys, New England and throughout the country, that, you know, super talented. I think Adam Finkelstein had us at 13 Division I scholarship level players this year, and a couple of younger kids that were coming up in our program. And unfortunately, we didn't get to play a game this year, only a couple preseason games, but, you know, a group that obviously works super hard, and despite not having a ton of film or anything like that, still able to send 8 kids to school on scholarship this year. So that's it. That's the whole basketball scoop for me. And then obviously, this next chapter is taking on the Midwest and heading to Missouri. I'll officially be out there June 1 and, start bringing kids onto campus, showing kids around, showing them what we have to offer down there, and hopefully bringing another, national level program into the mix.
Mm-hmm. Now we went already too far into the story. Nah, it's cool, but yeah, we're gonna talk about you. So, where did you grow up in New York?
So I grew up on Long Island. I lived out in Suffolk. Then I lived in Queens, Jamaica, Queens for about 5-6 years. And then I actually lived up in Westchester too while I was working for 5-Star. So I lived up in Westchester for a little bit. So kind of a little bit all over.
So talk about, the game in Long Island versus the city game. Which did you enjoy playing more?
That's different. I always say you got to have at least 2 New York City kids on your team. If you don't have 2 New York City kids, it can be tough to compete at a national level. I think we showed that there's just a different level of toughness mixed with an understanding of the game. These kids eat, sleep, and breathe basketball from when they were young, and you don't get that. You can get mixes of certain pieces of basketball. The South's always got great athleticism when it comes to their players, guys that can do stuff that I haven't seen a lot of guys from the Northeast be able to do. Chicago's got that toughness. Out in California, super skilled guys. You get a lot of guys that, unbelievably skilled when it comes to the game of basketball. But a New York City kid brings that mix of toughness. They got, a lot of guys call shake to them. They got some shake to them. They understand the game. They have the skill set, and you have some of the best athletes in the country. So I think it's a completely different type of kid that you get out of New York City. And it's unmatched, really. Completely different from a Long Island kid. I mean, don't get me wrong. We've had some talented kids. Danny Green. I played against Tobias Harris in high school. It didn't go very well for me, but I did, I played against him. So they have super talented guys, but that's once every 5-6 years. Whereas, New York City has kids, a handful every year that can compete at, the high major level.
Yeah, no, Long Island, especially Nassau County, those Long Island kids can play. It's just that, unfortunately, they don't really get the pub that the city kids get, unfortunately. But
For sure.
The talent is around, that's for sure. Because, you got the kids at Lehigh, Upper Room. I'm trying to think, what other schools? The local Catholic and public schools like Brentwood, St. Anthony's.
Yeah, Brentwood's always super talented. I actually had a kid this year from Long Island that played for me, Malachi Coleman, out of I think he's from Bayshore originally, and he's super tough. All of 6'2", long, defends, super bouncy, and you don't see it coming. And that kid's going to be, in my heart of hearts, believe he's going to be a Division I talent. He's obviously a 2022, so he's got another whole year, but that's a kid can really play. There's a kid plays with the Wrens who also played with Malachi in high school. I think he's playing in Jersey now, but kid Aaron Davis.
Okay.
6'5", 6'6". He's a Long Island kid. He's super talented kid. Can, shoot the seams off the basketball at 6'5", 6'6". So that's a kid that I think from Long Island that people are going to watch. Obviously, you had the New York Player of the Year this year, Jordan Riley, who's going to Georgetown. So, every once in a while, there's some serious talent out there. It's just not quite as compact as New York City.
Mm-hmm. Well said. So, were there some tournaments what were some tournaments in your younger days that you loved to play in?
Man, every game, I don't know about necessarily tournaments, but I went to Patchogue-Medford. So every game we played against Brentwood was a huge game for us because that was a conference. Lindenhurst, we played against, that was another, and Longwood. And every year, so we were kind of on the cusp of Longwood and Pat Med, kind of like the borderline. So kids would transfer in and out, and that would always be, a big rivalry because we play kids from other that used to be at your school that would then transfer out to go play for another coach. So those were three of the, bigger things we play in. And then obviously playing against Tobias Harris when he was at Hills, we played against him in the playoffs first round and I'll say it nicely, we got smoked, but yeah.
At the time, you probably wanted to go to a different word than that.
Those were some.
But yeah. So, talk about your time at Patchogue-Medford.
Yeah. Not a whole lot, to be honest. There wasn't a ton of great basketball out there. It was school first, obviously, which is why I ended up at St. John's on academic route. And to be honest, I was kind of going to be done with basketball. I was going to go on and do something else in my life. And as soon as I got to St. John's, I realized how much I miss being around the game, miss being in the gym. So there wasn't, it lasted about, I would say, 6 weeks. I was out on basketball. I was done. I was ready to give it up completely. And then kind of got back into it, changed majors, went into sports management major, and then connected with Coach Merritt. So I think Coach Merritt, he was a former coach in UNO in New Orleans and a few other spots. So he got me back on track and locked back in to be able to obviously not play, but be able to help these kids and, coach. So thankful for that for sure. And then obviously, on to bigger and better things, right?
Now, what year did you graduate from Patchogue-Medford?
Graduated in 2008. A long time ago. Long time.
Yeah. Shout out to the Patchogue-Medford graduating class of 2008.
For sure.
So, St. John's, talk about the 4 years at that school in Jamaica, Queens.
Man, it was different for me, to be honest. That was my first real introduction to, I would say, more so of the city, right? We're getting closer to the city than out in Patchogue, right? So I loved it. I mean, the experience there was tremendous. Obviously, the basketball program there. My first year was Herb, but second year was Steve Lavin when they had that great run. So I was able to kind of witness that turnaround, which was cool to be around for.
Right.
And, I mean, St. John's basketball has been down for quite a while now, but I think Coach Anderson's really got it rolling, and he's got, it locked in with being able to keep those New York City kids, which is what it's really about, right? When you're talking about being competitive and having a great program at St. John's, it's always been with local kids. So, yeah, it was a great 4 years. We started the Sports Management Association while we were there, which is still going on now. And, we were able to bring in a number of, Adam Silver, before he was the commissioner, was a guest speaker for us while I was there at school. And just bring opportunities to kids, whether it be NBA. We had NFL people come and speak to our groups, NHL, things like that. So, yeah. It's interesting to look back, though. I mean, the business as a whole, you talk to a lot of guys that, men and women that went to school for sport management, and there's not a lot of people still working in that field. So it's nice to be one of those people that are fortunate enough to still be working in, and working in the sport that you love. So grateful for that, and definitely appreciative for sure.
It's funny that you say that, because the guy that used to be an announcer at the Garden for the Knicks, he used to do Big Apple basketball back in the day.
Yup.
What was his name? I'm trying to think.
I might actually have it, because we used to do his tournaments while I was at 5 Star. We would go and recruit there.
Yeah, he used to be an announcer at Madison Square Garden. His name escapes me right now. But anyway, Spencer Ross. That's my guy. Shout outs to Spencer Ross. So one year I was working the Big Apple basketball event, and long story short, he basically kind of warned me. He was saying, you know, don't major in sports management because you're not going to be able to find a job in that major. And then at first I'm like, why would he be saying this? Like, he's in the sport. But then again, later on down the line, I figured he was right, because it's like once you get out of school, it's going to be hard to find a job with certain degrees. Like, those degrees may not be applicable anywhere.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing about sports is once you work in it, there's very few separate avenues you can go after that.
Right.
So like, I'm a basketball coach now, right? That's what everyone's got me pegged as. So what do I do now if for some reason I didn't have a basketball coaching job? What's the next avenue for me? You know what I mean? And that's when people end up getting kind of stuck. And if you don't network properly, you don't, you aren't successful in what you're doing almost immediately. That's where you kind of get stuck and have to go reevaluate and look back and say, oh man, do I need to get a regular 9-to-5 job or something like that? Because if you're a basketball coach and there's no basketball coaching opportunities, or you can't get your foot in the door, now what do you do? Because that was your job. That's your title.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately for me, I was a business major, and I graduated, with a business management degree at St. Francis College. And right now I'm an advocate counselor at a high school in Brownsville. I love my job. It's awarded me, good opportunities, to deal with, students that the system has given up on. But what I'm saying? I mean, it's a good job to start out. It's my first job, my first real job out of college. So this is dope, because you get to impact people's lives just as you do with basketball.
No, absolutely. And it probably gives you the flexibility to be able to do this basketball stuff as well on the side. So
Exactly. That's the beautiful thing about it. But yeah, going back to St. John's, were you often, how often did you go to the games at the Garden?
So I would go to games. I actually, with my internship at 5-Star, I had to drive all the way up to Pleasantville, New York every day, Briarcliff Manor, New York every day and back. So to pay the bills, I worked a lot. So I didn't get to go to as many games as I would have liked to. This is going to date me a little bit too and a throwback, but I worked at Blockbuster. I worked at Home Depot.
Wow.
And I actually worked event staff at St. John's. So I did like soccer games, women's basketball games, men's basketball games, stuff like that, just to kind of pay and afford to continue my internship with 5-Star because it was unpaid at the time. So I was working there for free and needed gas money and food and stuff like that. So I was working a couple side jobs, on the back end to make this basketball thing work, obviously. So luckily I was able to get to a point where I could turn it into something full time. But yeah, I went to a few. We went to 3 or 4 games at the Garden. We would always go in. Me and a couple of my friends, we would go in more so to Knicks games. And you being from the city, I'm sure you get this. The best way to get a Knicks ticket is to show up 20 minutes before the game and see what they got left, because you get some cheap seats every now and again. So we would go into the city and just show up 20, 30 minutes before the game and pick up those, back then it was $15, $25 tickets, but now I could only imagine how much they cost. But we would go and do that a lot. So that was something we enjoyed doing. So the Garden was always a spot that, you're from New York, who doesn't love it?
Yeah. Even when they're losing, people still buying tickets.
Hey, they're winning now, though. They're winning now. Rough loss last night, but it's been enjoyable to watch that and see what the Knicks have been able to do this year for sure.
So probably whenever we get those COVID tests, saying that they're coming negative, or people get that quote unquote vaccine, then they could go into the Garden. But I'm just waiting until the fall, until college basketball gets back so I can go cover some games, man. That's Absolutely. The plan.
I'm hoping, this fall. everything looks a little bit more closer to quote unquote normal. And when we're able to, really be able to move around and have practices on a regular basis and be able to play a full schedule and things like that, especially at the prep and high school level, because, a lot of guys weren't afforded that this year. And, it's difficult to watch these kids that are talented that would have had the platform to perform and be able to maintain, obtain scholarships, not be able to do that this year. So hopefully we'll be able to get back to normal this coming year.
Shout out to the St. John's graduating class of 2012. Good times. Now, 5-star. So yeah, when did the 5-star opportunity come about?
Sure. At the beginning of my junior year, I was taking a sports management class. I can't remember the exact name of it. And before the class, he kind of just put on the board, Professor Merritt just put on the board, internship opportunity, email your resume and cover letter to, and he put up the email. And it was at 5-star. They said it's unpaid. You got to come, you got to be able to get yourself to the office at least 3 days a week up in Briarcliff Manor. And luckily enough for me, I had a little car back then that was able to get me back and forth. And I figured I can make it work if I took another job. So I applied for it, went up there for an interview, and was able to secure the internship. So I worked there that entire first and second semester of junior year. And Lee actually offered me to work the summer with him. And that was my one way of getting paid. So if I worked all the camps over the summer, and there's nothing quite like that 5-star grind. The guys that have worked it know exactly what I'm talking about. You're not eating very well. You're staying in a college dorm, and you're too old to be staying there. Long hours. And then when you're on this, the quote unquote full-time side, I would work, you'd be working 15 to 18, maybe even 20 camps over a summer. So from June 14th through our super sessions at the end of the year in August 24th, 25th, every 3 to 5 days, you're taking a flight somewhere. You're not getting a lot of sleep, waking up, running camp for 4 days, still not sleeping well, getting back on a flight to go to the next camp in a different state. And it's tough. It's a real grind. But that afforded me the opportunity to meet so many people and connect and network. And, that's a huge part of my success, over the last 3.5 years coaching, is being able to tap into those 5-star connections and recruit and know these high school coaches and these college coaches, and just not just regionally or where I grew up or whatever the case may be. For what it is for a lot of people, I was afforded to travel to California, Texas, Florida, Atlanta, North Carolina, DC. Obviously, I worked the New York camps. I worked the New England camp. So kind of travel everywhere and meet these guys and, network. So that was huge in my development. And then obviously meeting guys like Lee Klein and Tony Bergeron, who were able to mentor me and kind of show me the ropes, especially once I jumped into the, prep scene. I don't know if there's a guy that's got more experience doing it at a high level than Coach B. So a guy that I could literally shoot a text or give a call to basically 24/7 and know he's going to answer and help me out or help me work through whatever it is I got going on. So 5 stars kind of, put me to where I was at right now. So definitely a huge step in what I was doing and what I've been able to do thus far.
Shout out to my man, Tony Bergeron. He's also an alumnus of this podcast. You know what I'm saying? So talk about what it was like working for Tony B, man. He's quite an interesting character.
Man. So Tony, it was basically myself, Lee Klein, and Tony Bergeron were the 3 full-time workers at the time. And then everybody else is seasonal or regional, right? So Tony's the athletic director, head coach at Springfield Commonwealth. And I just remember he is very particular in the way he likes to do a lot of stuff. So he's setting up his camps in Chicago, obviously New England, New York, and he's going through staffing, but I'm in the office. So I'm the one that's doing the staffing. And literally I'd get the full text message of Tony, everything I need to do, bulleted, all this stuff. You know, you got to hire X, Y, Z. This is the exact amount that everybody gets paid, all that stuff. It was great. He's a person that definitely grows on you, and he's definitely a guy that you either love or hate because he's honest. Because he's honest, and a lot of people can't handle that, especially in the climate we're in right now. Right. But I respect the hell out of him for it, and you know, no, great dude to work for, and really cares about not only people that he work for him, but the kids as well. I don't know if there's a guy that's got better relationships with his student athletes than Tony does. So,
yeah, man, he's doing great things up at UMass, man. I hope that they continue to, to prosper over there at UMass. You know what I'm saying? I want to see them get back to the top.
For sure. Tony's doing big things. I know his next move is going to be, a big one for sure.
But yeah, man, it's sad that the 5-star that we knew is no longer around, man. Like you said that they sold the company?
Yeah. Back in 2016, 2017. Yeah. And we really haven't seen a 5-star camp since then. So it's definitely a different time. And I think obviously the way AAU is over the summer, it's completely changed the landscape of what summer basketball looks like.
Right. I think AAU is kind of more prominent now than camps, unless you're going to a hoop group camp.
Unless it's a show.
Maybe yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, man. But even then, at a lot of these camps, they're just letting the kids play. There's really no instruction.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with too the personal trainer, quote unquote, right? That wasn't there 15 years ago. You didn't have all these guys that own a gym that can get you into the gym 24/7 and do private trainings, do one-on-ones, do small group sessions to where there's high school kids that can get in, that have access to a gym to be able to get into almost 24/7 with a guy that's willing to open it up for them and rebound, train, skill develop. So I think that's a big piece of it too.
Right, exactly. Now, let's talk about, DME. How did that come about?
So Lance Blanks was the CEO when I got hired, and he brought me in along with a group of other guys to kind of, we'll say, revamp what it was that they were doing. They had been around for a little bit, and they were figuring out what their avenue was going to be, right? So they had brought Lance in, and he had brought in a group of his guys, myself being one of them at the time. And we were able to take, I want to say they had maybe 25 student athletes at the time, mostly just basketball. And we were kind of able to blow that out. We went to, I think, 64 in my first full year there. We had 2 high school teams, 3 post-grad teams. We had a girls' high school team. We added strength and conditioning along with athletic training, like a full health and wellness piece for the student athletes. And we brought in their first quote unquote national program with a group of guys that was, we had a Fresno State commit, FAU, Loyola Marymount, like I had said, University of Tampa. We had the kid Cam Winter, who's a Long Island kid. He was with us in year 1, who's playing at Drexel, my first year down there. And a ton of other guys. Kid Frank Camgay, University of Missouri, Kansas City. Junior Madut, who's at Hawaii right now. A whole group of guys. And, we were able to do a lot of great stuff. And like I said, I was overseeing it all as we were starting to develop, because we were in such the beginning stages that I wasn't able to coach. And then by the time we grew it, it became tough to recruit kids and have those relationships with, the AAU coaches, the families, this kid himself. And, what you're selling when you're recruiting a kid isn't exactly what's happening when you're not coaching. You know what I mean? And there's nothing you could really do about it. Nobody's fault. It just becomes a difficult situation. So I was there for about, like I said, a year and a half, 18 months, and then went on to be an assistant over at Potter's House. But the facilities down there are great. Lance was phenomenal to work for. I don't know if you could have asked as a 25-year-old kid to work for somebody with more experience than LB. Like, when you're talking about played professionally, was a first-round draft pick, they didn't have it back then, but when he was coming up, he was a top 50 kid in the country, played for the University of Texas, made an Elite Eight run, first-round draft pick for the Bad Boy Pistons back in 89, 90, I think it was.
So he got that ring.
It was right around that time. So he played with Joe Dumars, and he played with Isaiah Thomas. I don't know if it was that year or it was the year after they.
Oh, no, it was 1990. So he came in after they won the championship.
I think so, yeah. And Bill Laimbeer and them, and then had a successful NBA career, played overseas for a while, was an assistant GM for the Cleveland Cavaliers during LeBron's first stint with Danny Ferry and them, and then was the GM for the Phoenix Suns, towards the end of Steve Nash's career. So, like, a guy that's done it at every single level is, it's phenomenal to be able to grab that much knowledge at 25 years old and be able to really start to understand the business side of it all under him. So that was huge for me. And I met a number of great guys, a guy by the name of Damon Haley, who I actually just talked to the other day, worked for Nike for decades, and now has got his own companies that he's running out in LA. But to be able to work for a guy like that has that type of network and contact base and proficient on the business side and the marketing side of sports was huge for me and my kind of growth and development. So I was fortunate throughout my career to be able to work with so many guys that their knowledge base is unlimited. So that was always huge for me.
Wow, and they got really nice facilities over there.
You've been down there?
No, I'm looking at the page right now.
Yeah, they have, 2 NBA courts. They have a full strength and conditioning facility. I think they just added dorms recently. I don't want to market them too much, but yeah, they have a good little thing going on down there. If they get the right people in there, they got a chance to do something special for sure. Great post-grad coach by the name of Wes Amalsus, who is their post-grad coach. Great basketball mind for sure. And a guy that I learned a lot from while I was down there. So DME's they're definitely, a program that's going to be on the rise if they keep the right people to run the program for sure.
Now, Potter's House. I heard of Potter's House a few years back when Udoka Azubuike was playing for them. Talk about that experience over there at Potter's House.
Man, it was fantastic. It was a different experience. It's a small private school, Jacksonville, Florida. And it's interesting because it's been one of the only places where basketball, it is their main attraction, but it doesn't take precedence over any, you know what I mean? It's not, the school comes first there, church comes first there, family comes first there, and then we're going to do this basketball thing. Now we're going to be really good at it, but we're going to do it after all this other stuff.
Right.
And it was kind of my first experience with that because everywhere I had been prior to that, it was basketball centric. You're at DME, it's a sports academy. You're going there for basketball or volleyball or soccer. At Potter's House, you're going to Potter's House for school. You're going to Potter's House for a great education. And then, but we're also going to be really good at basketball. And they made sure of that, and they helped us out tremendously. They obviously had a McDonald's All-American Jordan Brand Classic kid in Udoka. And we had a number of kids that were not quite at that level, but unbelievably talented. And it showcased, and we were able to, make a great run in states for the independent conference down there. And then, like I said, we qualified for the grind session national championships that year. And I think we lost to Prolific Prep in the quarterfinals. So, great run, a lot of success, obviously. And I deem my success at the school. How many kids did we get to school on scholarship, right? We could win a ton of games. We could lose some games. Nobody's keeping count. Nobody's, I always tell kids, right? I don't have a Wikipedia page yet, so no one's keeping track of my wins and losses. What people are keeping track of right now is how many kids I send to school. So as long as we could send kids to school on scholarship, I deem that a super successful season, and we've been able to do that everywhere we've been thus far. So Potter's House was no different.
Indeed. Now, Spring Commonwealth came after that, right?
Yep. We my first head coaching opportunity, Coach B had connected me. Obviously, he started the program years back and had connected me with the dean of students at the time, and interviewed, applied for the job. They were very much so down after Coach B had left. It wasn't really the same program when, like Hassan French and Jordan Vidal and those guys were there. So it had kind of dropped off a little bit, and they were looking for somebody to be able to bring the program back as close to it was with Coach B. And I was able to get that opportunity to try to bring it back to that level. And, I think we did it successfully. And, you go back to the New York kids thing, that was the biggest part for us, right? Mm-hmm. We had two of our top 5 players were New York City kids that were back-to-back city league champions. And then we had two more kids from Rhode Island. And that was kind of our, top 4. But we had a kid from Queens and Brian Stevens, who was a dead eye shooter. I mean, you're talking about 37, 38% 3-point shooter who went to Assumption College. So he went Division II. And we were able to kind of make a name for ourselves in year 1. And a lot of that had to do with Northeast city kids. So we were super successful. Like I said, we made the National Prep Championship. We won the Power 5 conference. We went undefeated in the conference. So you're talking about schools like Upper Room, Woodstock Academy, Hoosac, Notre Dame, West Haven, and we went undefeated, 12-0. No one beat us, and we were undefeated, obviously, in the conference tournament. So it was a great run. Won the AAA for the Power 5 that year. Our season ended with a loss to St. Thomas More in the National Prep Championship. But, in year 1 to be able to finish top 10 in the country and make the National Prep Championship was, a great opportunity for myself in year 1 of being a head coach, and, a great opportunity for a lot of those guys that played for Springfield then. So.
Indeed. Now, talk about, coaching in the NEPSAC.
It's tough. I mean, so when you've coached in Florida, wherever it is you coach, everyone thinks that's the best region, right? I've coached in a few, and I've been fortunate enough to be around enough basketball with 5-star in different regions. There's nothing quite like the NEPSAC, because every night you're going against 4, 5, 6. Sometimes you play Putnam Science, they got 10 Division I kids on their roster.
Yeah.
Brewster Academy, we played Brewster at Brewster. So drive 3.5 hours in one day, show up at Brewster, packed house, 7 kids that are playing high major, all top 100 kids at their gym with their refs, and try to win a basketball game. And then drive 3.5 hours back. And then the next day or 2 days later, you got to go to Putnam Science, where they haven't lost a game in, since Tom's been there. in their home gym. You know what I mean? That's tough. And there's not quite a conference that can say that. You can say you play a national schedule and make your schedule can be tough because you play a lot of guys, but those games are spread out. They're usually tournament style, and they're big games that you can get up for, and then you go back and you play your local high schools or whatever. That fact, you're playing dudes that are going to play in college every single night, and you're playing at least 4 of them. There's not a game where there's not a Division I kid on the roster, and there's not at least 3, honestly, if you're running your schedule right. So it's tough, and it's every night. And what people don't fully understand is if you play in New York City, what's the longest drive you have for a game? You know what I mean? In Knepsack, you got to drive 3 hours every time you play a game, and people think that's a local game. Like Brewster's a local game for us. That's a 3.5 hour drive. New Hampton, 3.5 hour drive. That's a local game. Woodstock, local. They're in our conference. That's a 2 hour drive. Hoosac, 2.5 hours. That's local. That's a conference game. So it prepares the kid for the next level. And I think so many kids are underrated up here because of, I don't think people truly understand the level in which they're playing night in and night out and how good the league is.
That's true. But then again, it's like you guys expose them to stuff that they probably would never get to see in their other states because, places like Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts are great states, but a lot of the better kids don't stay home anymore.
No. I mean, even when you're talking about New York City, people say the city's down. It's not. Just all the kids aren't playing in the city anymore.
Right. But even then, there's still guys that's still going to Division I schools out of the city. There still is. But, compared to the other states, you know what I'm saying? There's very few that are going to school out of Connecticut, at least locally.
Right. No, absolutely.
Or Rhode Island, like what I'm saying, like Rhode Island, I think they probably have it the worst as far as exposure is concerned. Because you got Providence, you have Bryant, Brown, Rhode Island, but how many of those local kids are getting recruited? You know what I'm saying?
No, for sure. And we get a lot of those kids. I mean, the kid we had this year at Springfield, Jawari Hamlin from Rhode Island. I'm going to pub him a little bit right now. College coaches that are watching this. He's 6'2". He looks like he's 12. He'll be one of the best players on any program in the NEC tomorrow. The kid can play. He's sneaky athletic, super bouncy, will defend 1 through 3, even at 6'2", and he looks thin. I get it. The kid can play. He competed. He started 3 out of our 4 preseason games for us and played almost the entire game when we were out in Phoenix this past year. And I think he averaged 15, 6, and 6 for us. And that's on a team as an underclassman with 8 Division I kids on the team. But he's from Rhode Island and nobody knows about him. And, so it goes. But, fortunately enough, there's an opportunity for those kids to be able to play in Knepsack schools.
Now, let's talk about the local city kids that we had. Well, 2 of them in particular. Femi. What was it like coaching Femi?
Man. So I'll tell you the whole story. So when you take a New York City kid, you make all your calls, right? So you call everybody, talk, hey, what's the deal with this kid? Why isn't he where he's at? Tell me all the bad stuff. I want to hear about all the bad stuff. I couldn't tell you the number of stories I heard about Femi. I got that kid on campus. And the first 2 days I said, a couple expletive words that we won't say on here. And I said, we're in trouble. The kid is everything that everyone says he is. And not because he did anything. He didn't have a conversation outside of yes and okay or nodding his head to me for 48 hours on campus. Barely spoke. So I was like, oh, this isn't going to work out. The kid doesn't want to be here, X, Y, and Z. I don't know if I've coached a better kid and a better human being than that kid. the following 9 months. Still talk to the kid, every so often, like I do with all my guys, but cares about his teammates, cares about his coaching staff, the people around him. The love he has for his family is unmatched. Takes care of his schoolwork. He was all academic at Pitt this year for the ACC. Good kid. Didn't get in trouble. Didn't do anything that everyone said he was going to do. And in terms of talent level, that kid's above and beyond what people even realize he is. Like, I can't wait for, the next 18 months to go by and for him to be able to showcase what he truly can do. And I think we started seeing it at the end of the year when they kind of allowed him to play his game a little bit more. And when you're talking about, I think he had 28 points in the ACC tournament game to finish off the season, tough loss for them. But I mean, how many freshmen can start at the point guard spot in an ACC tournament game and give you 28 points? That's tough. That's tough. And what people don't understand, he's a true point guard. He had been playing out of position probably most of his life because he played with Cooks, Kadari. And he's all of 6'5". He's super long, loves to defend, willing to defend, can defend, and will defend any position on the floor. And the things he can do with the ball in his hands are just special. So, I mean, kid almost averaged a triple-double for us at Potters at Springfield. And what I always say is he was the best player on my team, and he was our 4th leading scorer. So the willingness to be a great teammate and a natural leader, that kid's off the charts in all levels. I have nothing but good stuff to say about that kid.
Shout outs to Femi. And for those that may or may not know, Pitt will be playing St. John's at Madison Square Garden December 18th. So buy your tickets now. Unfortunately, one Champagne brother will be in the NBA by then, but still, it's going to be a good game. It's going to be like a rematch of the old Big East. So everybody, please get those tickets now.
For sure.
Whenever they come out.
And we missed out on Femi versus Posh because when they came up to play us, it was the one game Femi missed. He was hurt. He had an ankle injury. So we didn't get to see the Femi versus Posh matchup.
And hopefully the grind session does come back to New York, After that unfortunate incident, that made me think, maybe after, it may not want to come back again. But the grind session, they do a lot of great stuff. So I think that they should definitely come back to New York City again.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. It was a great event. Obviously, unfortunately, some things transpired towards the end of the night, but to be able to play in Gaucho's gym, it doesn't get much better than that. And it doesn't get much more New York than that. That is New York basketball. You know what I mean? So
now let's talk about Jalen Murray, Juju, as everybody has commonly referred to him as. Talk about what it was like coaching Juju.
I would say close to the same thing. You hear all these things about the kids, and I would say one of the things I've been fortunate enough to be able to do in my career is not really have to listen to that stuff, be able to form my own opinion on these kids. And I had Jalen, I would say, unfortunately, I only had him for about 3.5 months because I loved the kid. I mean, in the gym all the time, took care of his academic stuff while he was here. Not a trouble, no trouble off the court. What people won't say about him, I don't think they give him enough credit. That kid's always in a good mood. He's always smiling. He's always making jokes. He's always having a good time. And he is super competitive, which people don't give him credit for. That kid's 5'11" and can play with the best of them and understands the game, plays with angles, can get downhill, got that New York City shake to him, elite level shooter. I mean, talking about offensively, special, and then has a knack for the ball. He has that kind of, Allen Iverson, Stephen Curry, play the passing lanes, try to make something happen gambler in him, and it works for him. I mean, when you're that, you got to figure out how to be effective. And on the defensive end, he tends to be because of that instinct that he has. He's just always around the basketball. So I love that kid. I was just on the phone with him last night, actually. We're working on where he's going to be going to school. I'll let him announce that, but I think he's come close to a decision on it, and he'll be letting everybody know shortly. But I was just on the phone with him last night, and we're going through that process of him deciding his school for next year.
Man. Brian would have been good for him, but it is what it is, man. I would have loved to have seen him in the NEC at least a couple times a year, though.
For sure. That kid's going to be fun to watch at the next level. That's a kid that's only going to get better at the higher levels because his game translates more.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's talk about the real reason we came on here tonight, Prise Academy. So what, for those that may or may not know about it, talk about the school a little bit.
For sure. So it's in Columbia, Missouri. For people that don't know where it is, I'm from New York, and I didn't know where it was until 2 weeks before I flew out. It's directly in the middle of Kansas City and St. Louis. So it's about an hour and a half from each, maybe a little bit more, give or take. It's a great city, University of Missouri. So Mizzou is right there in downtown. The school is about 2 minutes from University of Missouri. So we have all the amenities of a large college city. We have our own basketball facility. We partner with Breakthrough Performance on our strength and conditioning and training facility. We have college apartment style dorms that are newly built. The owner and the person that's running it is Pep Stansel. So he is a local guy, great relationships with, when you're talking about Missouri, Bradley Beal, Michael Porter Jr. He runs MPJ Elite, Michael Porter Jr.'s elite AAU program, which is, I think they just got ranked top 15 in the country, something like that. So they have a great program that he's been running, trains University of Missouri guys, trains all the local and regional talent. And, they flew me out a couple weeks ago to see everything. And, I'm excited to get down there. Like I said, I'll officially be down there June 1. But to get to work, already recruiting, you will definitely see some familiar faces on my roster this coming year, and you'll see some guys that everybody knows about, and that's for sure. But that's what comes with it, right? But we'll be doing a national high school program and a nice national prep program. So the prep program will run just like Springfield Commonwealth. Anybody 9th through 12th grade and postgraduates can play on that team. We'll play up here in the Northeast. We'll play knapsack schools. I talked with Hargrave. We'll play in their tournament like we had before COVID hit the year prior with Femi's group. And then the national high school team we'll be on the grind session. I talked to Dan this morning, actually, talked to him a few times these last couple of weeks. So we'll play a national schedule as well. But our national schedule will come through the grind session events. So, it's going to be exciting for sure. Skill sessions, small group training. You'll obviously get your practices. You'll get your strength and conditioning. We have housing, meals. And then we're actually doing, especially because of COVID and how it's kind of changed the atmosphere of academics, a lot of our stuff's going to be online. We're almost going to be strictly online. So we'll run through two different avenues, Mizzou Academy online, which is through the University of Missouri, or Connections Academy, which is both NCAA certified. Connections is just a second option for guys that are coming from out of state if they want to choose to elect to stick with their state's curriculum going forward. So we'll be basically all online, which is great for the kids. It gives them a little bit more freedom in terms of being, scheduling and stuff like that. And obviously an opportunity, to be able to really hone in on that gym time and take advantage of your 9 months while you're at school.
Indeed. Now, this is one of the questions that I love to ask before I lead up to the final question. If you could go back to in a time machine to your college days at St. John's, what would you tell a younger Nick as he's going through the transition of giving up playing ball to, doing the sports management and interning at 5-star? What would you tell yourself at a younger age?
All right, I'm gonna say two things. One's gonna be quicker, one I'll dive into a little more. One is for all these guys, and I've dealt with it a lot, even in coaching and working at all these academies. You're not a player anymore. If you want to make that transition, you have to understand you're giving that up 100%. You could, as much as you want, you could do it on your own time. You can get in the gym, you can get in the weight room, you could shoot around, but you're not a player anymore, and you can't have that mentality or that mindset when dealing with kids. You're not a player anymore, right? So that's the quick one. The second one is don't chase it. Be okay with not, especially in basketball. You got to be okay, and going into it, you should understand you're not doing this for the money. You're going to have to be okay for a long time. You'll get further if you grind it out and take those internships, work for little amounts of money to be able to be put in situations where your network is growing at a super large rate, and you're able to access to stuff, and networking is so big in this thing that if you can be afforded those opportunities for way less money than you would normally make, don't chase that $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 paycheck just because it's a better salary, when you could have an opportunity to work for a Tony Bergeron, work for a Lee Klein, work for a Lance Blanks, where you're able to gain all this knowledge. And that would be the biggest thing. It sucks, and it was rough. I made nothing working at 5-star for 2 years. I had to work, like I said, at Blockbuster and Home Depot and these other jobs that nobody want to work at. But it afforded me the opportunity to now be where I'm at. You're talking 10 years later. I'm the head coach at Prise Academy, able to, fully support myself and do, for the most part, things that I want to do and be able to do, and have things that I want to be able to have. And I'm the head of my own program, but I don't get there without those experiences where I wasn't really making, I was barely making enough money to get by. So that's a huge thing, especially for all those younger guys that are trying to get into this thing, graduate assistantships. Everybody wants to work in basketball. I mean, there's millions. Who doesn't want to work in basketball? Who doesn't want to be a basketball coach where your office is the gym? Everybody does. So what are you willing to sacrifice to do that? And I think the biggest thing and the easiest thing to sacrifice is the financial piece. Sacrifice it. Yeah, whatever. I'll take the internship and I'll live in the student housing or whatever. Or
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll move cross country and whatever. Make it
So
work
they
for
say.
25 grand.
Yeah, so they say until they're in that situation.
Right. But I've done it. That's why I'm saying it through experience. I've done it. And, it was horrible. Nobody wants to put back DVDs at night and rewind DVD tapes and all that stuff. And nobody wants to work in the garden section at Home Depot and pick up carts in the parking lot, and it sucked. Nobody wants to stand around at St. John's events and collect tickets and, pick up trash and stuff like that. It wasn't fun, but it was worth it in the end, because I was able to work for 5-star and, be able to get to the places that I'm at now because of that opportunity. So.
Indeed. Final question. What's next in the future for Nick Colouris and Prise Academy?
Shoot. That's a good one. I think a successful year. I think some big time recruits. And I think a team that is going to be super competitive year one. I mean, we're not going in this the same, like I said, when I took the Springfield job, and everyone goes, Nick, if you just stay, and these are dudes that have done it for a long time, yo, you just got to be 500 year one. If you're 500 in the knapsack, you'll be good. I said, I'm not traveling 1,500 miles across country, moving myself to go 500. We want to win. And that's our goal at Prise. And we want to get kids to school, and we want to get kids to school for free. So, you know, hopefully there'll be a lot of that in the future. There'll be a lot of winning in the future. And there'll be another national prep championship bid in the future too for our prep team. So championships, right? That's what we're doing it for.
Nick, thanks for coming on to share your story, and I wish you and Prise nothing but the best moving forward.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, Dave, and appreciate everything you do for our kids for real. You're a huge help in every single facet.
Indeed. Well, everybody, this was episode 122 of Hoops Talk with Dave's Joint. Shout outs to my guy Nick, who's doing a fabulous job with the youth. Did a fabulous job with the youth at Springfield Commonwealth Academy and is now at Prise Academy in Columbia, Missouri. For anybody that, you know, supports Nick from Long Island, St. John's, the old 5-star crew, Potter's House, DME, and so on and so forth, go check out this episode on YouTube, Facebook, and IGTV. And also check out his Twitter on the Nick C and the Academy MBB for more updates on Prise Academy. So everybody go check out your social media right now. Stay safe, stay blessed. Peace.
Appreciate it.